Okay, so today we're going to talk about a pro-life activist who was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in prison for standing outside of an abortion clinic. Crazy. Robert Kennedy Jr., we're going to show you his willingness to turn on a dime out of political expediency and to do so on this very same issue, on the issue of abortion. He took a very, very radical stance. Within 24 hours, he completely flipped on this. So we'll discuss that. We're going to talk about George Soros spending $80 million to try and shut down conservative voices online. And then OpenAI. OpenAI is releasing a free version, and I get it. Everybody worries about AI. I have my own concerns about AI. However, the power grid is a concern that not a lot of people are talking about. And the CEO of Generac came out and explained the burden that's being put on our already taxed power grid because of weather, because of we'll get into all that. But either way, the power grid is being stressed to its max. And OpenAI, other AI platforms use a massive amount of power in those data centers, and that's going to have implications for all of us across the country. We'll discuss all that and possibly more. We'll see how we do on time. Thank y'all for being here. Let's get into it. I'm Jared. This is Continue Freedom. Okay, all you wonderful people, welcome back to Continue Freedom. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard. So let's go ahead and get right into this. A pro-life activist, Lauren Handy, was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in prison for protesting outside or in front of an abortion clinic. She says that I'm at peace with myself and my future. I will go into court with my head held high and heart open. She was sentenced to 57 months in prison with credit for 9 months already served on Tuesday for violations of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or the FACE Act. Handy and others were arrested in 2020 after they blocked the entrance to an abortion clinic. They were then convicted on felony conspiracy against rights and a FACE Act offense back in 2023. Absolutely nuts. So who are they talk pretty frequently about the co-conspirators. Who are these horrible co-conspirators? Well, these were people in their 60s and their 70s. These were older folks who were their co-conspirators. Oh my gosh. And in this instance, pro-life activists, this is back in 2023, so September 18th, pro-life activists convicted of felony conspiracy for protesting in front of an abortion clinics, and they face 11 years in prison. And you can see here, Libs of TikTok posted, and they said, meanwhile, most BLM protesters who burned down buildings and destroyed our country for months had their charges dropped, which is 100% true. Now, what do they say about these co-conspirators? According to the DOJ, the defendants conspired to create a blockade at the reproductive health care clinic, otherwise known as a place where they kill babies, to prevent the clinic from providing and patients from receiving reproductive health services, also called killing babies. It went on to say that Marshall and Bell took the trip to D.C. area to meet up with Darnell and take part in a clinic blockade that was directed another co-conspirator and was broadcast on Facebook. The DOJ claims that Marshall and Bell were part of a group that forced itself into the abortion clinic and then intentionally blocked its two doors with furniture, chains, ropes, and even their own bodies. Now, the defense for these folks says that all they were doing was kneeling in front of basically kneeling in front of it. They chained and roped themselves together, and they were praying. They were singing hymns. But we know, here you go. Here you go. You try to protect life, they want to put you in prison. They don't care about your age. We've seen the grandmas and grandpas, the people who just waltzed into the Capitol with the doors open and ushered in by Capitol Police, getting rounded up later on. And now here we go. These old folks are going to die in prison. All because they're trying to protect life. Wow. The attorneys, by the way, this is where I just found that line. Attorneys representing the defendants reportedly said they did not prohibit people from coming into the building and had only kneeled, prayed, and handed out pro-life literature to people coming in. How dare you? How dare you tell people that there's an option other than killing a child? How dare you take money out of the pockets of the good people at Planned Parenthood, founded by Margaret Sanger, who was a known eugenicist and racist? How dare you? Now, who's a big supporter of this? big supporter of abortion, is Robert Kennedy Jr. He gets a lot of play over here on the right. But the problem is, he's now said this was within 24 hours. He said, my assumption was wrong, and revises his position on abortion. Once the baby is viable outside of the womb, it should have rights, and it deserves society's protection. Well, what did he say? What had he said before that? What sparked the whole outrage? Well, this is what sparked the outrage. Listen.
But so in other words, keeping it as is with Roe versus Wade having been overturned and leaving it up to the states to determine if and when a woman can have an abortion?
No, I wouldn't leave it to the states.
Right.
No, I would.
You would say completely, it's up to the woman.
My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have government involved.
Even if it's full term?
Even if it's full term.
Even if it's full term? A 9-month baby. At this point, you're talking about partial birth abortion. Come on. Well, what happened? There was huge backlash, and within this happened it was released in an afternoon. By that evening, he had flipped his position. Crazy. This is a purely political move. Got it. And he took tons of heat for being on Sage Steele's podcast. And this was Friday again during the daytime. He sends out an X tweet later on and says, you know what? I was wrong. My assumption was wrong. Here's the thing. Seriously, the guy's 70 years old. What new information was presented to him between Friday afternoon and Friday night that caused him to change his mind? No new medical discoveries were made. We know exactly what happens. We know that anybody with two functioning brain cells understands that life begins at conception. Everything else is arguing vagaries, right? You're trying to make arguments that fit your worldview, but they aren't scientific arguments. They aren't reality. Life begins at conception. We can see it now, by the way. This is a video that this is the first time that we've ever been able to see what happens when a sperm actually impregnates an egg. This is done through, it was a fluorescent probe of some sort. The flash of light that happens, it was amazing when they were able to see this for the first time. They had seen it in other animals. They had seen it in mice, but they hadn't seen it in humans. That's the moment that new genetic code is being created. It's not an amoeba. It's not going to be a koala bear. It's not going to be a ficus plant. It's going to be a human being. And we know that at that very moment, that's what's being created. But people have to make these silly arguments. But somehow, Robert Kennedy Jr. made some major scientific discovery between Friday. Oh, no, wait, I know what it was. It was poll numbers. It was backlash on social media. So for something that he has taken such a firm stance on, he's willing to flip like that. Wait, now, granted, he's flipping at least in the right direction. He's wrong on both counts, whether it's full term or whether it's just viability. The fact remains we can't take that life. That life should not be taken. But that should be an indicator to people. All it takes is the Twitter, mob to change his opinion. Is that the kind of for those people that are, center of the road, is that the kind of spineless person that you actually want to be president? That's that easy to be swayed? All it takes is the blue hairs and the nose rings, and then he's done. He's like, all right, fine, I'll cave. I know it's abortion. I know it's one of the top 3 issues that we argue about in this country that divide us as a country. Now, I pulled up some CDC stats, and in 2021, 625,978 legal induced abortions were reported to the CDC from 48 reporting areas. Among 47 reporting areas with data each year during 2012 to 2021. In 2021, a total of 622,108 abortions were reported. So that was 622,000 lives taken. The abortion rate was 11.6 abortions per 1,000 women aged 15 to 44 years. And the abortion ratio was 204 abortions per 1,000 live births. Now, for a country that is in population decline, for a country that's not having children, maybe abortion isn't a decent option. 625,978 in 1 year. That is 250,000 more people than we lost in the entire Civil War. And we did that in 1 year. Women in their 20s account for more than half of abortions, so 57% are women in their 20s. These are women who should be having kids, who should be raising families, but no, we're going to kill them off. Nearly all abortions in 2021 took place early in gestation, so the bulk of them are early on. 93.5 of abortions were performed at less than 13 weeks gestation. A smaller number of abortions, 5.7, were performed at 14 to 20 weeks gestation, and even fewer, 0.9, were greater than 21 weeks. So early medication abortion is defined as the administration of medication to induce an abortion at less than 9 completed weeks gestation, consistent with the current Food and Drug Administration. So 53% in 2021 of all abortions were early medication abortions. Use of any early medication abortions increased 3% from 2020 to 2021, and it increased 137% from 2012 to 2021. So this mifepristone and other drugs, they are sending this out. This is why the Supreme Court cases that are talking about the mifepristone are huge. Now, the Supreme Court case that they recently heard, it was back in, I believe, March. It was back in March. The Supreme Court was talking about mifepristone, but it wasn't going after the legal right to have mifepristone. It was going after the FDA's faulty procedures and basically getting it approved. So they overlooked a lot of the health concerns over mifepristone. And essentially what happened was they were able to send this out. La-di-da-di, everybody. Anybody can have access to mifepristone without seeing a physician. And the problem with that is if a woman is having an ectopic pregnancy, well, aside from the fact that it's killing a baby, that's the primary concern. But when you talk about the FDA overlooking the health issues and the side effects and the potential dangers behind it, you could have women with an ectopic pregnancy taking mifepristone, and they think that the problems that they're having are side effects from mifepristone and not life-threatening ectopic pregnancies. But they don't want that. It's too much. The profit margins are so high when you can just mail out abortion drugs. It's disgusting. And so I say all that to say, while RFK Jr. is completely wrong on this issue, he still is showing his lack of spine. And what says he wouldn't flip on some of the places where we do agree with him, we being people on the right, which when you talk about big pharma, he's definitely on our side of this. This is why we have to be careful about who we choose. You know, these are two huge issues. Big pharma, the vaccination, all the hubbub around vaccinations and the gain of function research and all this. He sides with us on that sort of stuff. But when it's a massive issue like abortion, and he is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, one has to supersede the other. And what have we found out about the vaccines and COVID and all that good stuff? Well, turns out Rand Paul and Russell Brand were right. NIH official admits that U.S. tax dollars funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab. Who'd have thunk it? I mean, we all knew it, but they didn't want to admit it. Finally, somebody did. A senior National Institute of Health official admitted to Congress that U.S. taxpayers paid for gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China in months leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic. Representative Debbie Lesko, Republican from Arizona, asked NIH Principal Deputy Director Lawrence Tabak, did NIH fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology through Manhattan-based nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance? He said, it depends on your definition of gain-of-function research, Tabak said. If you're speaking about the generic term, yes, we did. Huh. Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? And so our good old buddy, Tony Fauci, we're going to play a video here from him. If y'all don't remember this, people were waking up to this long ago. And I think this was several years ago. This was right at the onset of not the pandemic, but of the release of these vaccines and the big push to have everybody take these vaccines. But listen to this.
I haven't gotten it yet. I'm waiting for them to be able to.
Oh, you should get it first. Okay, that way you won't give it to them.
Oh, I thought I would give it to them if I get it.
No, not at all. In fact, we got to get you vaccinated so that if you were to get infected, you could pass it on to them. So you're actually protecting your family by getting it vaccinated.
Well, I heard that it doesn't cure it and it doesn't stop you from getting it.
No.
So
on the very, very, very rare chance that you do get it, even if you're vaccinated, it's you don't even feel sick. It's like you don't even know you got infected. It's very, very good at protecting you.
Just the Anacostia. So.
He knew otherwise at that time. It's been proven now. Rand Paul has drug it out of him. He knew at that time that he was lying. Let's keep
Get up
going.
there. Okay.
All right, see you later.
Thank you. Have a good day.
The people in America are not settled with the information that's been given to us right now. So I'm not going to be lining up taking a shot or a vaccination for something that wasn't clear in the first place. And then you all create a shot in miraculous time. It takes years to create vaccination.
Well, it used to take years.
Okay, it used to.
You know how many years were invested in this approach? About 20 years of science to get us to be able to do it.
20 years is not enough. And 9 months is definitely not enough for nobody to be taking no vaccination that you all came up with.
The only reason I'm talking to you right now, as close as we are, is that I've been vaccinated.
Right.
But if it allows thousands of people like you don't get vaccinated, you're going to let this virus continue to percolate in this country and in this world.
Something like the common flu then, right?
and not
It's
like
much
the
more
common
serious than the flu.
Well, the flu kills a lot of people annually, too.
You know how many people died of the flu the last year? I mean, not this year, virtually none, but the previous year, about 20 to 30,000. You know how many people have died from COVID-19 in the United States? 600,000 Americans.
Well, the number that you all giving that died, that's once again, that's you all's number.
That's your number. I love this guy.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you start talking about paying people to get vaccinated, when you start talking about incentivizing things to get people vaccinated, there's something else going on with that.
I love that guy. If anybody out there knows who that guy was, I'd love to talk to him. I thought this was one of my favorite videos from back in the day. But either way, even back then we knew that things were nefarious. Everybody had their antennas up. Everybody was concerned about it. And RFK is somebody who has, he's come down on our side of this particular issue. And somebody else who's woken up to a lot of things, and congratulations to him on his baptism, by the way. But Russell Brand, this was something he posted on Twitter. AstraZeneca withdrawn. So now AstraZeneca has admitted that they're causing blood clots. Pfizer is settling cancer cases out of court. True. And former CNN anchors are taking ivermectin. Where's the conspiracy theory now? And he's talking about Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo was on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, and he was one who came out hard against Joe Rogan for taking ivermectin, calling him saying he's taking horse dewormer and how he's dangerous and this, that, and the other. And now he said he's been on a regular cycle of ivermectin, or when he was ill, went on a regular cycle of ivermectin. So he was saying one thing, which is what the corporate media told him he had to say, and he politely obliged to keep his multi-million-dollar contract alive. But he was doing the exact opposite in order to keep himself safe. That is narcissism and selfishness of the most epic proportions. Crazy. It's crazy. But this is why, for all the woes of this political season, I've realized how consistent Donald Trump has been and how inconsistent everybody else has been. I was really, really frustrated about him, the stance that he took on pro-life versus pro-choice. But Carrie Lake was someone who completely flipped the script. I've never known her to say that she was, and maybe I just didn't hear it. That could be entirely on me. But she was willing to flip the script completely and say, no, this has got to be a woman's choice. This has got to be a woman's choice. So she basically takes, for political expediency, takes a pro-choice position as opposed to standing on principles that most conservatives stand on, and that is the pro-life position. RFK is doing the same thing. He was all believed in partial birth abortion, essentially, by saying that full-term children could be killed in the womb, but then because of political expediency, he backs off of it. So we have to pay attention to how our political representatives, how the people that say they want to represent us, how do they respond under pressure? And all it took was a Twitter mob to change the mind of RFK Jr. I'm going to assume it was something similar, or because of some polling numbers, Carrie Lake was able to decided to take a more left-leaning stance on abortion. This is a cut and dry issue. And if you're willing to cave on something as important as the life of a child, then I have no patience for you. Okay, let's go on and talk about ChatGPT. This is nuts. This is absolutely crazy. So ChatGPT offers ChatGPT maker OpenAI. So OpenAI is the company that owns ChatGPT, announces its new flagship model. Okay, here we go. So the company provided demonstrations of ChatGPT 40s. This is from Fox News. Capabilities, including a new voice assistant and vision abilities. So in one demonstration, the ChatGPT voice assistant was able to read out a bedtime story in different voices, emotions, and tones. In another, the ChatGPT voice assistant used its vision capabilities to walk through solving a math equation written on a sheet of paper. So that's using the camera that's on the phone. Now, do you want your kid to have a bedtime story read to him or her, by artificial intelligence? Something that is getting its information, getting its knowledge from the internet, which is one of the darkest places on earth. That is frightening. But here's the kicker. A ChatGPT search takes 17 times more power than a Google search. If they open up the free version, now you're talking about millions of additional users. They had, when they first launched ChatGPT, I think it was 100 million active users. So now you're talking about a massive number of people, adding millions and millions and millions of people to it. And the CEO of Generac was on Fox News, and he was talking about this, and he predicted that in the next 5 years, AI will use as much power as 40 million homes. That's tacked onto a grid that is already seeing unprecedented usage. When we talk about the weather that's been going on down in the South, when you talk about the snowstorms that the South hasn't seen in years, and the massive drain on our power grid, now you're talking about in the next 5 years adding 40 million homes to a power grid that our elected representatives has shown zero interest in protecting, zero interest in expanding. And currently it consumes about 4% of the grid. In the next 10 years, it will be consuming 25% of the grid, according to the ARM CEO. And the ARM CEO is the company that's part of NVIDIA's infrastructure. So How does the left think that we're going to deal with this? Well, we're going to deal with this through renewable energies, right? We can fix these problems with renewable energy. And what is that? It's wind, solar, I don't know, burning patchouli oil or whatever else they think. Let's take a peek here at this is the largest floating solar farm. And all it took was one storm, and she gone. Here you go. Oh, yeah, there's your renewables. Heavy metals floating in the ocean. All it took was a storm. I don't know if you all realize this, but we have storms fairly frequently, especially out to sea, storms we may not even see. That's their solution. I saw the other day this massive wind farm was completely knocked out by a hailstorm. We see that the wind turbines that are put on people's property, burning up, killing birds, horribly destructive. These are the best solutions that they can come up with. It's an absolute sham. It's an absolute sham. Whew. When I think about the power grid, we talk about, has brought up the fact that we are not protected against some sort of nefarious attack, some sort of attack, whether that's from China or that's from some other country. So we aren't shielded against an EMP. We aren't shielded against any other types of attacks that could come against our power grid. But we have to be preparing. These are things that we as the people have to prepare for. The federal government right now, that we know that if our power grid were to go out, the generators that are required to repair it take about a year to produce. So in about a year with a shut down power grid, you're talking about the estimates are somewhere around 90% of the U.S. population would die. There would be 10% of the U.S. population left. Some people say it's 60%. Everybody has their own guess. We don't really know. But in major cities, if you live in a major city, you are absolutely at risk if the power grid goes out, because the water will stop, the gas will stop, every amenity that you have in your life will cease to exist. If you live out in the country in a more rural environment and you've got some cattle, you've got some chickens, you're going to survive. You're going to be just fine. You can keep your house warm. You can keep food in your stomach. If you got a well, you can, this is how people live. There's a lot of people who still live like this. Those people will be fine. But their biggest concern will be warding off the droves of people trying to get out of the cities, that will turn into these dystopian hellscapes in a mere matter of days and weeks. And here they are saying, okay, I know we're not going to improve our infrastructure. I know we're not going to build up the grid, but we are going to let AI, all these data centers, have access to our power grids and consume the same amount of power as 40 million new homes in America. And, you know, those of us that are trying to warn people, that are trying to wake people up to what's actually going on in the world, we are being silenced. And who is silencing us? Yes, the left is silencing us. But more importantly, everybody's favorite villain, other than Klaus Schwab, is George Soros. George Soros has spent $80 million. Let's go ahead and go to this. He spent $80 million to silence Americans and media research. Excuse me. Liberal billionaire George Soros has spent $80 million to silence Americans, Media Research Center says. Are you kidding me? So George Soros, who is a known, I mean, everybody knows the name of George Soros. He's buying off politicians left and right. He's buying off DAs left and right. So Free Press, a media group financed by liberal billionaire George Soros, is looking to incorporate global pressure to push big tech platforms to juice their censorship operations before the 2024 U.S. presidential election, according to Media Research Center, or MRC. Free Press, which is not affiliated with journalist Barry Weiss's The Free Press, bills itself as an organization that, quote, closely watches as the decisions shaping the media landscape are made and sounds the alarm when people's rights to connect and communicate are in danger. However, in a new report, the conservative MRC found that Soros gave over $80 million to affiliated groups calling for censorship ahead of November's critical election. One of the wealthiest men in the world is using his vast wealth and power to silence regular Americans ahead of the 2024 election. At a time when defending free speech is key, leftists are trying their best to shut down the voice of half of America, especially those who disagree with the radical agenda promoted by Biden, Soros, and most big tech executives. The people that he's invested in include, last month, Free Press, let me just go with this, boasted about a letter urging executives at Discord, Google, Instagram, Meta, Pinterest, Reddit, Rumble, Snap, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube to keep online platforms, quote, safe and healthy. Oh, we know what safe and healthy means. That means censorship. It was signed by 200 civil society organizations, researchers, and journalists, according to Free Press. Now, I would use the term journalist loosely because if they are backing George Soros, they are not journalists, they are activists. He doesn't waste his time with actual journalists. He's only going to spend time on people that want to be activists. The MRC found that at least 45 of the signatories had their coffers packed with Soros cash to the tune of a whopping $80,757,329. So he's pumping money into all of these activists who are in turn more than willing to sign a piece of paper saying that Google, YouTube, all those social media platforms, Twitter, YouTube. Now, Twitter I don't think is going to cave, but YouTube most definitely will. All those others, except for Rumble and Twitter, I think those are the two safe platforms. But that's where George Soros wants to spend his money. Open society, no borders, all that great stuff. Now, I was talking to some buddies of mine the other day, and we were talking about the globalist idea, George Soros' globalist idea, no borders, no nationalities, common language, all that is a very stark reference back to the Tower of Babel when everybody had huddled together. It's like they want to take us back to that time when God had confused people's tongues. He'd sent them out around the globe. He didn't want them to be huddled. He wanted, cultures, and he wanted different languages, and he wanted to spread mankind across to every corner of the earth. And all these evil people want to do is try to bring us back together again, living under one roof. With them, people like George Soros and Klaus Schwab and these other nefarious families running the world as our figureheads, as our leaders, the ones who know best. This is the importance. If you made it this far, that means you're interested in this content. So please share it. Please comment. Please like on it, because they are trying at every turn to shut us down. Anybody who has a conservative voice, especially in an election year, they want to shut us down. And it will require you to help us out, to help us spread the word. content creators like myself, commentators like myself, we absolutely require the involvement of our audiences to help spread the message of freedom, liberty, justice, freedom of speech. We need your all's help. And so I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching these videos. I know I have a lot of repeat listeners. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. You are greatly appreciated because we're building something wonderful here. We're going to fight back against all this together. We're going to do this together as a community. And that's all I've got for you all today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments below, share the video if you want to, and we'll see you in the next episode.